Hey, it's Aiden. So today's video is going to be, I'm just going to preface this straight away. It's going to be a little cringy, a little uncomfortable. If it's something that's going to bother you, I don't really want you to watch it just because your comfort's important to me. But at the same time, I will be having some information in it that's pretty helpful, even if you experience those discomforts. So, I think the best way that I can be of service in that situation is I'm going to do the full video still. I'm going to be using certain terminology that, if you don't like, may be uncomfortable. So, in the description, I'll have a couple tips and tricks for those specific people who don't like that. That way, you don't have to watch the video to hear the tips and tricks and be uncomfortable, but you can still benefit from it, because I think that's pretty important if you're experiencing that. You don't want to experience that while getting like a health check, right? So yeah, I think that's the easiest, simplest way I can do that for everybody. So tips and tricks will be in the description. I'll have a little like note for you to read. So basically, we're going to be talking about reproductive health. So pretty much the whole point is, even though it's uncomfortable, it can be dysphoric, it can just be awkward, it can be all kinds of things. It's really important that you still get your health checks. So pap smears, vaginal exams, all kinds of exams. I mean, you should be getting blood work periodically anyways if you're like on testosterone. So pretty much it's just getting comfortable and doing those things that you should be doing to make sure that your body is operating the way it's supposed to, especially since it's going through these different changes. So, for example, if you are 21 and over and you have like ovaries and a cervix, that kind of thing, you should be getting a pap smear every, I believe it's 3 years, approximately. And I think as you get a little bit older, I want to say 30s to 60s. I'm not too sure about that one, but I think that one's every 5 years, something like that. So I just want to preface it really quick. This isn't medical advice. I'm not a doctor, researcher, none of that. I'm pretty much just making this to share my experience of what I went through, but also to kind of prepare you for what could happen, what should happen, that kind of thing. Because me as a just regular person, I have anxiety. Like doing anything that I don't do regularly gives me a little bit of anxiety, yeah. So I like to kind of know what I'm getting into before I do it. So I'll look it up, I'll ask questions, that kind of thing. However, I feel that in situations like that, where you're dealing with like reproductive health, vaginal exams, that kind of thing, as a trans guy, I feel like it causes that extra layer of anxiety because like I've got like a ton of facial hair and I'm going and getting an exam like that. How uncomfortable is that? What's that like? So it's just kind of preparing you and giving you these different resources, things to do to make it easier for you so you feel less anxious. So really, this is more about like pap smear specifically, just because that's the most recent thing that I had done. She did like an overall exam as well, but it was specifically for that. And then I got blood work the week before that for my T levels. So it's pretty much just pap smear related. So who needs a pap smear? If you have a cervix still, you need one. If you don't, then you don't. And I think once you're past a certain age, I want to say, don't quote me on this, I want to say 65. I would look that up. But yeah, if you have a cervix, you should have it done. And honestly, everyone's needs are pretty different. Depends on all kinds of different factors. So what I would do personally is just discuss with your like primary care doctor or whoever you see when you should get one, that kind of thing. So you kind of know when you specifically should. The basic time frame is about 3 years. Every 3 years you get one, but your specific needs could change. So yeah, discuss that, make sure you get a game plan, and go when you're supposed to. But here's how you can prepare for your exam. I think that is the most critical part, is the preparation. And I say that because I go to a clinic that is very LGBT oriented. That is their thing. Like every time I'm there, I'm so comfortable no matter who I see in the lobby, because that is their bread and butter. They do, like PrEP, HIV testing, just overall, like pretty much anything that I could need as a trans guy or, a gay person. I would feel comfortable going there and know that I'm like fine. So my biggest tip is to look for a clinic that is LGBT specific or friendly. So the difference between LGBT specific and LGBT friendly. Specific means that, like, that's what they focus on. Every time you're there, someone there is like gay, trans, what have you. Friendly is just more implying that, like, you won't feel discriminated and you'll feel a little bit more comfortable. They may not have as much training or familiarity, but they're like still a really good option. Either way, you should find someone that works with LGBT plus community. That way you kind of know what you're getting into and you're not uncomfortable. They're not saying things they shouldn't be saying to you, that kind of thing. I think that, like, that really is the most important part I can think of, because if I didn't feel so comfortable, that exam that I had probably would have gone way differently. So definitely do that. To preface too, so like it may not be in your like next, town or your general vicinity. I have to drive like 25 minutes one direction. So that's what? It's like 50 minutes total plus traffic, plus the exam. So it takes me like a couple hours to go do blood work or go get an exam, that kind of thing. But for me, I sacrifice that time and drive because my comfort's more important to me than that. So I'd rather drive the extra time than like drive close and be treated terribly or made to feel uncomfortable or just kind of meh. So I think that is really important. Decide which you would prefer. Would you rather drive close or would you drive further for different care? Another tip is try and see if you can bring someone with you, especially if you're not going to a clinic that is LGBT friendly, because they can be an advocate for you. I find that as the, minority, the trans person, the gay person, I'm a lot more uncomfortable correcting people than like my friend is. Even if my friend's gay, they're like, excuse me. So try and bring someone with you. I know COVID can kind of like change the policies in place. So just see what their policies are, where you're going. If you can bring someone, that kind of thing, and just find someone that will make sure that you're not being, uncomfortable, that kind of stuff. Main thing for a pap smear too, so since they're doing an exam and they're swabbing and that kind of thing, you want to make sure that it's not during your cycle. So I think it depends on your personal body when your cycle stops. Mine stopped like a month after taking T. I stopped around December, so that wasn't a problem for me. I just scheduled it whenever. But if you are still menstruating, then you're going to have to plan around that. Worst case scenario, let's say you're like, oh, I shouldn't be, and then you are, just call, let them know like, hey, I'm supposed to have an exam, I can't do the exam right now, can I reschedule? And just reschedule it, because that's the like what they need to do the exam. They can't be like mad at you for that, right? It's just part of the exam process. So 48 hours before the exam, you should also, I think it's avoid intercourse, lubricants, and I think something else. But basically the whole premise is you don't want anything to interfere with the results. Lubricant and stuff can do that. So unfortunately, 48 hours before your exam, avoid that. You're going to want to wear comfortable clothing that is, first of all, comfortable. Second of all, easy to remove and put back on. So they're going to give you privacy. Like, they're going to leave and like knock and all that stuff. But I think it's easier than like wearing jeans to like wear some shorts or something, like some sweat shorts or sweatpants or whatever. But then again, if you are comfortable in jeans and you can put them on quickly, really your call. They give you plenty of time to get undressed and dressed. Plus it's waist down, so it's really just your pants and your underwear. So yeah, it didn't take very long. So I would say whatever's comfortable, whatever's quick, whatever's going to make you feel most at ease, wear that. So this is another major tip. This is what I will have in the description because I think it's pretty important. If you are uncomfortable with specific terminology, like let's say maybe you don't want to say like vaginal, vagina, cervix, ovaries, like whatever, then what I would do is let the physician know what words you'd like to use instead. Just say, hey, I'm really uncomfortable with certain terminology, causes me a lot of dysphoria. Can we refer to it as this or something else instead, et cetera, et cetera. I think that tip works best, honestly, if you're going to a clinic that is LGBT friendly or like specific. If you're at like just a regular OBGYN, I don't know how well that would go because I can imagine them just being like, no, that's what it's called or whatever. I personally don't know. I don't go to one that's like that because in the past I've had a bad experience before I even knew I was trans. Like as a cis person, I did not like that person at all. So I'm not sure how that would go if you're not going to a clinic that is like that, but if you can, I would definitely do that, especially if it's going to cause you discomfort. The whole point is for you to be comfortable, because the exam itself, like, I like where I go, I like the person I see, but I still was uncomfortable. The whole process is just a little uncomfortable. It's not terrible, but it's like, it's not fun, that's for sure. So during the exam, this is what should happen. So typically it's gonna start like any other. They're gonna just like check you in, fill whatever papers you need to out. I think they'll probably like do your blood pressure, weight, height, that kind of basic thing. I know that every time I go to the clinic, no matter what it's for, unless they're like sending me out the door in 10 minutes, I always get that done regardless. The physician will then, once you meet with them, go over the exam a bit with you. So what mine did is she told me what the exam was like, what she's looking for, asked me some basic questions as well. Like she asked me if I've had the HPV vaccine, that kind of stuff, because basically she wants to know my general medical history, as well as know if there's anything else she needs to be doing during her exam to just get it done in the same go. There's no reason to do, multiple visits, right? It's uncomfortable enough. So they'll ask you questions, kind of just get that medical history, make sure everything's good. And then what she did from there is she just kind of went over the exam process, just verbally. And then after that, what she did as well is she pretty much got the supplies she would need out and showed me what they were. So she would be like, this is a speculum, this is that, and showed me everything, and then explained pretty much what they were used for, but also like different things. So one thing that I didn't have to worry about, but you might, is she only uses a small speculum regardless. She will not use a larger one because she doesn't find that there's a need to, and a lot of the time it can be uncomfortable or cause pain. So your exam, just side note, should not be painful. If it's painful, they need to change the size or they're doing something and you need to tell them. There's no reason it should hurt. It's going to be uncomfortable, but it shouldn't hurt. So that's why she uses a small one. If you're finding that you're in pain, it's probably from that, I think, but just let them know they should be changing something. Once she went over the instruments, she just, put them off to the side somewhere sterile and then had me like get undressed. So she gave me a lot of time. I feel like I was sitting there for a while, but it's just to make sure that you're undressed. They give you it's like a paper type cloth thing to like lay over you, so you're not just like sitting in the open nude, in a cold room. It's terrible. What I will say, this is a good tip too, is I feel like people don't know where to sit on the table. I certainly, I know it's towards the edge, but it's really towards the edge. So to save yourself the uncomfortable scooting during it while you're naked, I would say to just set yourself up for success and make sure that you're already at the edge of the table. They might still have you move, but if you're as close to the edge as possible already, you're probably in the right spot, and it'll be a lot easier and less awkward for you if you don't have to move. I found that pretty awkward. I think it was the nakedness. Maybe that's why it was awkward, but yeah. So you want to sit towards the edge. They're going to put the stirrups up, which basically are those things for your feet, and put your feet in it. And then what you want to do is relax your legs and let them fall to the side. That way everything's just relaxed, and it kind of helps you relax. Just lay there, let the stirrups hold you, and let them start doing their thing. So my physician, she's great. I was already telling her before the exam that in the past I've had a really terrible doctor examine me and I hated it, and that was before I knew I was trans. So I was explaining that to her, and she was in the same agreement. She was like, yeah, I will not let a man check me. I go to very specific people because I don't want to deal with that either. So I totally get where you're coming from. But yeah, I think even if I hadn't said that, she would have still done the same thing. So I think it's just important to not only find those clinics that will make you comfortable, but do some research. Do they have, people complaining about getting exams? That kind of thing. I think that would help a lot. So anyways, what she did is she walked me through the procedure prior, but she also said that she's going to tell me everything that she's going to do before she does it, which she did. And then she also starts examining with her hands before she does anything else. So, for example, you have glands, in your groin area. So she was just checking general areas, their hands. And then when she was switching to do something else, she would say that verbally and then do it. And then when she switched to instruments, same thing. Everything she did, it was narration. you were not surprised because she was telling you what she was doing. And I think if your person's not doing that, then I think you need to find a different doctor. That's just my personal opinion. Other people may not feel that way, but I find that that is really good bedside manner, that they are making you comfortable, because the exam is uncomfortable. They're going to do their best to make you feel better if they're a good physician, and if they're not doing that, then I don't know, but that's my opinion, of course. If you don't feel that way, that's fine. So for the speculum, which is like that like spread thing, basically what they'll do is they'll use a tiny amount of like specific lubricant, so that way it's not just like, you know, a random device in you. It helps. They use different types of swabs. I don't remember the differences. They're shaped differently, but they should be going over what they use. And what they'll do is it like goes through the speculum or something and then swabs your cervix. She also swabbed because the HPV thing. I just did like a general check of everything. It shouldn't hurt. It should be uncomfortable and just feel like pressure. Like I mentioned earlier, if you're in pain of any kind, let them know so they can do something to fix that, make sure you're okay, that kind of thing. My understanding from what the physician said is a small amount of bleeding from the swab is normal, just depends. If you're like excessively spotting like a lot, let them know. Just call the clinic and say, hey, this is what's going on. Can you check me out, or whatever they need to do. I personally didn't have that problem. I had like a little bit of general bleeding, but it was just like the swab. Yeah, nothing crazy. So if you are experiencing those problems, then I would say to call and just find out what you should do next. So after the exam, they're going to give you the privacy to get your clothes back on. They also let you wipe off the excess lubricant, and then they'll come back and just say, hey, we're going to schedule another appointment, blah, blah, blah. And they go and send the swabs off to the lab to get tested. Mine usually get tested pretty quickly. I usually hear back from them in the next like day or so. So it just depends obviously on the clinic and the lab, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. That's pretty much the exam. If there's more to it, then you either need more done or whatever. Everyone's body is completely different. So that was my personal experience. Yours may be different. You may need different things, less things. Just depends. All in all, I don't think the exam was very bad. It was uncomfortable, but that's just because the anxiety, and the physician was great. Like literally, I go to her for everything, and I love her. She's great. So I don't feel uncomfortable. She always uses very general terminology for like your anatomy, just because that's the name. If I told her that I didn't like that, she would probably change it, but I don't have that problem. She doesn't say anything that kind of makes you feel uncomfortable. Like, it's really a great clinic. Like, if you're in Arizona, let me know. I'll tell you the clinic. But yeah, they're great. Love it. It was pretty straightforward. I feel like I'm already gonna get questions about this, but I'm just gonna end it on my little story of what my previous experience was like. That way you understand like the differences between an LGBT clinic and a non-LGBT clinic. So the guy I went to, he was just a general like OB/GYN, I think. Yeah, he's just like nearby in the area. I think I was like probably like 20 or 21. I was in that general age, and I went for, I think it was like cramps. So basically, I'm pretty positive I have PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. So if you didn't already know, if you have ovaries or like menstruate, pretty common that you get cysts. It's just they're usually pretty small, and they usually just kind of like resolve on their own and pop on their own, and they're like tiny. When you have PCOS, you tend to get more, and they usually are bigger. Sometimes they're so big that in order for them to pop, they need to be surgically like taken care of. They won't do it on their own. And then when I had gone, I was just like in a lot of pain, a lot of cramping, a lot of meh. Plus I needed a checkup anyways. So I went, and I think I needed like surgery. It ended up resolving itself. Luckily, I think that was really lucky. I think whatever rules the universe was looking out for me, so I didn't have to keep going back to that guy because he was so uncomfortable. But basically, the uncomfort wasn't the fact that I had pain or anything like that. It was the questions. So I know that they ask you medical questions, and they're usually relevant. Like, they're asking for a reason. And it's always the, like, are you on birth control? Are you having protected sex, unprotected sex? Stuff like that. And I totally know that that is typical. So that's not what bothered me. What bothered me was I answered his questions, and then he seemed very confused. Like, are you trying to get pregnant? Like, what are you doing? And I explained, like, no, I have a girlfriend. I am not sleeping with men. I don't really need that. And I've never taken birth control, like, ever. So, no, those are my answers. I, of course, said it really nicely and, like, uncomfortably. I'm very shy, especially in, like a health clinic setting. Like, I'm not very... I don't know. I'm very introverted when it comes to stuff like that. So I was pretty nice, you know, I explained it. And then he proceeded to ask me a bunch of uncomfortable questions. And I don't feel like they had any medical relevancy. Maybe I'm wrong, but I felt that they were crossing a bit of a line. He was basically asking me how, what we use, stuff like that. It's almost like he wanted me to describe a scene of my sex life to him. And it was terrible. I felt really uncomfortable. And I think it's that thing where you, especially when you're younger, so I'm glad that I'm not like this anymore, but you see healthcare professionals as like a professional, an expert in their field. So you kind of feel that like authority, like they're asking you for a reason. So you're kind of like, do I answer? Do I not answer? So it kind of made me feel like I had to answer his questions. But like, honestly, in retrospect, I really think he was crossing a line. I don't see how what I do in the bedroom has any relevancy to my health. I'm not pregnant. I don't plan on it. Like I hadn't had sex with a guy at any point at this time. So I was like, there's really no need for him to know this stuff aside from, am I on birth control and that kind of thing. I explained the situation and that should have been done. So yeah, it was terrible. I hated it. I never went back. Did not like him at all. And I'm so thankful that I go to the clinic that I do now. And I think that is exactly why it is so important to find one that is comfortable for you. Regardless, like even if you are a hetero, cis woman or male, if you're going somewhere that makes you uncomfortable, go somewhere else. Like healthcare shouldn't make you uncomfortable. Just because they're a physician of some kind does not mean that they should treat you in such a terrible way. You should go somewhere that treats you properly and doesn't cause discomfort. That's just bottom line for everybody. And I feel like especially when it comes to being, you know, gay, bi, trans, like literally any of that, you shouldn't have to deal with that. So yeah, I think when you go, you're going to do fine. Just make sure you take a deep breath and then go into the clinic and do it as needed. They're going to understand. And honestly, if they're LGBT specific, then they should totally get it and they'll make you feel a little bit more at ease as well. So yeah, if you have more questions, comments, concerns, leave it below. And thanks for watching.